Hey guys, if you watch CSS3 in under 5 minutes and you'd like to learn a little bit more about CSS3 transforms, stay tuned. I'm going to be covering them in this video. We're going to be following up from the last part we stopped at in the last tutorial, and this is where you had a CSS3 button that we created and the Photoshop one. What I'm going to do first of all is get rid of the Photoshop button because we don't need it in this tutorial. So we're just going to have the CSS3 one. And now I'm going to teach you about CSS3 transforms. Now let's say for example that you're happy with the CSS3 element that you've created, so we've got a button, and now you want to add, say, rotation to it, for example. How do you do that? So what I'm going to add is WebKit transform, so dash WebKit dash transform, and then use rotate and include the angle that you want to rotate at as follows. So I want to rotate it at 45 degrees. In Mozilla, so Firefox, it's just Moz transform, and again, same syntax, rotate 45 degrees. Now what does that do? Basically, it rotates this button 45 degrees in a nice clean way, and very similar to the reasons why you would use CSS3 instead of doing this in Photoshop is that you can easily adjust the degrees to anything you want without having to re-export graphics. So I've just updated it to do that now. How about another feature of CSS3? What if we wanted to skew the button? So let's remove the rotation transform and return it back to the way it was before. And now let's take a look at skewing. So how do you do a skew? In CSS3, the Firefox parameters for that are -moz-transform, skew, so I'm using the skew keyword, skew function, and here is the angle at which I want to skew it at, so 35 degrees, and then WebKit transform, skew 35 degrees. It's very easy to use. The syntax is very easy to understand, and I've just skewed the button. Again, if I want to change that, if I want to say let's skew it at 75 degrees, I can achieve that. So let's reset and let's learn about another property of CSS3, scaling. So how do I achieve scaling? Again, we're going to be using Moz transform for Firefox and WebKit transform for Safari and Chrome. And then we just use scale, and it's entering our scaling parameters. So I'm going to scale to 1 0.5 and 1 0.5 for both of them. And basically that's going to scale it down. Consider this sort of resizing the element almost, but you're going to be maintaining the exact same properties that you previously had. And let's say I want to change that to 0.8, 0.8, and update it again. And you'll see we've scaled it, but it's a little bit, the entire element is just a little bit larger than it was before. It's a little bit, the height's been increased a little bit. So let's get rid of the scaling, go back to the standard element. Now, what about translation? Translation allows you to basically define points where you want them to occur at. So I've just moved, similar to a margin effect, for example, I'm translating this button to a particular point on the screen, so 1020px. Let's say I wanted to increase that to 1090px. And as you can see, I've moved it lower down the screen. If I change this to 100px, so I change the first parameter to 100px, I'm going to be able to move it across the screen. So all you need to do is define your tuple of values, and then you can use translate easily to define a position for something on the screen. Now, I've just shown you a couple of new properties in CSS3. What if I wanted to actually combine all of those? I'm going to teach you about chaining now. So here I've got two chain commands. I've got Moz transform and WebKit transform, but unlike the other examples, I've actually got quite a few other things added on. So I've got skew this button by 30 degrees, scale it to 1.1, 1.1, rotate it by 40 degrees, and then translate it to a particular point. And again, the same for WebKit. Now what does this look like? Well, basically I've done a lot of different modifications to this, and it looks like a crazy button, but you can actually find useful uses for this. If, for example, you wanted to have text appear at a particular angle, or you had an interface where you wanted a button to appear in a particular way, if it was around a shape or a 3D object or something like that, you could use chaining of these different parameters to achieve your effect without having to use Photoshop or a graphics package. So, I'm going to go back to rotate. Rotate is my favorite out of this whole lot. It's just a nice, easy way to rotate objects. You've also learned about rotation, skewing, scaling, translation, and chaining in this video. So I hope these were useful. If you want to learn more,